Bristol. And
Evening, everybody. No, you're not hallucinating. You haven't lost 3 days. It is Friday. It's not Monday. It is still the Rabble Network. It's the women's show, impromptu Friday night. Since we don't have a Friday night Rabble, we thought would fill that rather can't even speak, that rather large void by a wee preview of the upcoming Old Firm game on Sunday. But first and foremost, having a look at the transfer business, because there's been a little bit of it. And joining me tonight, I'm delighted to say, is Demi. Demi, they're taking full advantage of the fact you're back from America. You're on almost as much as Brian. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, everyone.
And the aforementioned Brian, who's always on. Hi, Brian.
How you doing? You all right? This is going to be an interesting chat tonight, I can imagine.
It is. And also joining us is Car and our cat.
Yeah, he won't leave me alone. He's been a nightmare, so he'll just sit on my knee for most of it.
Good evening, Car.
Evening, folks. How are we?
And we may or may not be joined by Alan. I think he's trying to get away from work so he can join us, because obviously Alan's input is always very, 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 very good. But Brian, the main reason I wanted to get together tonight, obviously, is the fact that there was a couple of major signing announcements yesterday, and we have now lost. If we look at this wee graphic that I've made up, we have now lost basically an entire midfield and an entire front line, because yesterday we lost Liv McLaughlin and Kirsty Hammett.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a mate who is from the same neck of the woods as Kirsty Hammett, and I messaged him when the news broke, and I was like, I says, "Did you know about this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I knew on Tuesday this was happening." And I was like, "For goodness sake, you could have told me." So yeah, I think that Olivia, Cara and Laura are very, very knowledgeable on who's leaving and who's not leaving and who's coming and going. And I think they were fairly confident that Liv was going to be leaving. It was just a matter of when. So that wasn't the surprise, but the surprise one obviously was Kirsty Howard leaving, because she's been such an important player for us in the last couple of seasons, scoring vital goals in cup finals and wins over the Old Firm and big games. She always seems to come up trumps in the big league games, could you say? And that, I think that was the one that sent shockwaves through the Rangers support, because that was one that nobody's seen coming, nobody sort of had wind of, I think Cara and Laura's reactions in the group chat was enough to say how much of a surprise it was. So yeah, I think the Kirsty Howard one was the major one yesterday. I think, as I said, Laura and Cara have always got good knowledge of who's coming and going. I think they said last week that there was rumours that Liv was leaving. So I think it was the big news yesterday that was Kirsty Howard more than the Liv McLaughlin one.
Yeah, Cara, the timeline took me by surprise. I had heard on Wednesday that Liv was going to Leicester City for a medical, and then obviously yesterday, earlier in the day yesterday, they announced the fact that Kirsty had gone, Kirsty Howard had gone, and she's away down to Crystal Palace with Joe Potter. And I thought, okay, maybe that means that Liv isn't away. Maybe the information I've got is maybe we get a bit mixed up, and it's Kirsty that was away for a medical. And then obviously an hour or so later, they announced that Kirsty's gone as well. Both of them are absolutely massive loss to the club.
It's nuts, really, when you consider Kirsty Howard. I assumed she'd be here forever. I just thought, this is her club. She's going to retire here. She'll just be here to the end of the time. And I didn't even consider the fact that she could leave, to be honest. It wasn't something I'd ever really thought about. I just, like Brogan, like Nick, that they would just be here until they retire and then probably go into coaching. But I get it to an extent that she maybe wants to go down to England, try herself, and Joe has obviously offered her that opportunity to do so. And she wouldn't have got that, I don't think, if Joe hadn't have come to us. So I get it, but it's baffling to me that we've lost two integral players, and yes, we brought one in, but we don't seem to be in any great hurry to replace them. firepower that we've lost, and then midfield. Our midfield's absolutely decimated. It's just incredible how few players we have in that midfield now.
Yeah, as we'll just bring Demi back in. I don't know where she disappeared to there, but I thought she saw the comment that said, "Why was Demi leaning in?" She disappeared. I don't know what was happening there. So Christopher, it wasn't your fault. She is back. So Demi, Kirsty Howard leaving, an absolute massive shock. I mean, it's a lot of goals we've lost.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop is beefing with StreamYard a bit this week. That's the third time it's happened this week. So apologies there. Yeah, even not just with Kirsty, but yeah, with Kirsty, she was our third top goal scorer last season, I believe. So it's a lot of goals lost. It's also a lot of assists lost, and that sort of play through from the midfield to the sort of your other striker when she's on the park. So yeah, obviously it's a big disappointment. And like Car said, I also hadn't even thought that Kirsty could leave. You can't blame her at the age she's at. If someone's offering you a contract to go, probably you'd imagine her last big contract. And if someone's offering her to go play down south, you would go, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Brian, as Demi flagged up, there's literally, as we were going live, there was a decision made a couple of days ago that the WSL and the quaintly named WSL2, which is the second tier, in case you couldn't work that out for yourself, folks, they've just brought in some legislation that there's a minimum wage for players on the books of clubs. That's quite an odd one to me. I've heard the maximum wage. I've never really heard the minimum wages for football players. But obviously, I mean, Kirsty going down to Palace, she'll probably be on a decent lift. I mean, when Rio Hardy went earlier in the summer to Bristol City, she doubled her wages.
Yeah.
So there is money in the women's game in England as well as the men's game. So as Demi rightly says, I mean, Kirsty's not getting any younger. She's been at the club 5 years now. You could argue that she's left because she's won everything, because she's won the league, she's won both cups. But then you could argue that last summer as well, because she's won the league in 2022 and both cups season before last as well. So it's just, for me, it's just the timing of it, the fact that it's the very last day of the English window.
Yeah, as I say, I was like you. I was unaware of this rule of minimum wage brought in, and it seems awful convenient that they both sort of went on the day after that sort of legislation's come in. So yeah, I mean, I as you say, when contracts like that are thrown in front of anybody, male or female, doesn't matter. If you're doubling your wage or whatever the sort of numbers are, it's very difficult to say no. If we were doing all our jobs and somebody says, "Oh, by the way, we'll offer you double your wage," you're going to go. So it's just a difficult one for any player to take, and especially somebody like Kirsty Howard, who's a fan of the club, and as Carr was saying, she was probably envisaging, like everybody else, that she would stay for the rest of her career. But then when that carrot's thrown in front of you, it's an extremely difficult one to turn down. So as everybody else would say, Kirsty goes with our best wishes, and we hope she smashes it down there. But yeah, it's the lack of incomings that are starting to worry everybody in the sort of chat that we've been having. It's the fact that there doesn't seem to be any alarm bells ringing that numbers are low in the squad. As Carr says, we've virtually decimated our midfield from our first choice midfield from last season. So the alarm bells surely, if they're not ringing now, well, we've got problems, haven't we?
Yeah, Carr, before we get to the incomings, because we have had an incoming as well, Beat Bop Boop, which is an absolutely fantastic name. Absolutely love that name, Beat Bop. Does it imply that Kirsty prefers working with Joe to Leanne, or is it purely the draw of the English Premiership if they get promoted? I mean, we sort of referenced it was you and Laura really that noticed that when Joe left, not one of the players wished her good luck on social media, which is something that they normally always do. So we thought, well, maybe there was something there. But there's Kirsty away down to play for her. I wondered earlier, was there possibly a clause in her deal when she left that she couldn't come back to Rangers for a period of time to look at our players, if you like. But I would have thought if that was the case, they would at least make sure that it was out with the transfer window. So is it the Joe Potter factor that's enticed Kirsty to go to Crystal Palace, or is it purely going to be the cash?
Well, I don't know if it's just the cash, but I think it's the opportunity to go and help a club get promoted and then potentially play in the WSL. That's probably more of a draw. She'll probably be the main striker. I'm not that familiar with them. I don't really know what players they've got on the books, if they have other strikers that would be ahead of her kind of thing, or she'll be kind of number one, so to speak. But I mean, I doubt they'd ever put a clause in that a previous manager couldn't come in for our players. I don't think that would ever happen, but it'd be nice. It's nice thinking if we could do that. But
it's certainly happened in the past with managers leaving.
I don't know. That
Yeah.
Seems mental to me, but obviously that's not the case with Jo, and she was allowed to bring Kirsty in. But I don't know if it is Jo or if it's familiarity, and maybe she didn't have any other offers, but she got that offer and she thought, well, why not? I'm probably not going to get another opportunity. I'll go down and try, I suppose.
Yeah, and Demi, I'll just bring up this. I'm having fun with graphics tonight. We've, as we referenced, we've basically got rid of 10 and 11 players, lost the whole midfield, three strikers. But what we've brought in over the course of the summer, we've only brought in 4 players. We brought in Fallon Connolly-Jackson, who's a fullback that we brought in from Sheffield United. We brought in Alice Griffiths, a midfield player from Southampton, who had been on loan at Durham. On loan from Roma, we brought in Shinji Kim. We now know, having watched the training video, that Shinji's her first name and Kim's her last name. And today, which was one of the things that prompted me to do this tonight, we brought in on loan 18-year-old Jess Pegram, who's come in on loan just today.
Yeah, so looking at, obviously we've seen bits of Alice Griffiths and Shinji Kim and little of Connolly Jackson. So at the moment, we don't really have sort of much to judge them on, other than what we know about them from their previous clubs, and having looked at all of their all of their seasons from last year, it's slightly worrying to see that we haven't brought in what we've lost. Now I hope I'm wrong and that they can do it up here, but from having a look very briefly earlier, I mean, in 100 games, Alice Griffiths, okay, she's a midfielder, but in 100 games she scored 3 goals. Jessica Pegram has yet to play a senior game, and obviously I know she's only young and she only just signed a senior contract, but it's the lack of experience in the women's games. And then there's obviously the same with Kim. She signed for Roma, I believe it was in January. She sort of played 12 minutes for them, and prior to that, I believe she was playing at university. So it seems almost very much a bit of a gamble to bring in all these players who seem to have limited first team experience. Yeah,
Brian, I mean, it's we've lost a lot of experience, as we said. That's the experience that we've lost with Tess, Chelsea Cornett, even Kirsty McLean. Although she was young, she still had quite a lot of experience. Jane Ross, okay, yeah, she retired, and then Rio and Kirsty. That's an awful lot of experience out the team. And as Demi referenced there, the players we brought in, they're all young players, not really a lot of experience. I mean, we signed Jess Pegram today from Brighton, and she signed her first professional contract on their 18th birthday back in May. She's yet to make a senior appearance. Having watched the training video from earlier on, which she was heavily involved in, she looks fairly tall. I don't know how tall she is, but there's not really a lot of her. She's got obviously still got a lot of filling out to do because she is only still a kid. It worries me a little bit, throwing her into defence against robust Scottish defenders. Because if you look at this, which we got from How's Your Touch on Substack, which Laura stuck in the group chat this morning, this was done before. Obviously, we brought Jess in. We don't really have a lot of options anywhere around the team.
No, I must admit, you kind of had a rough idea. Well, you kind of had an idea that numbers weren't great, but I think when it was put in front of us like that, as in you could see the positions, you could see the numbers in each position, I think that's when that took the wind certainly out of my sails. It kind of totally alarmed me. I was like, for example, right wing Brogan. If something happens to Brogan, then you're knackered. Sarah Ewens has been out for goodness knows how long now, a year and a half at least. So and Laura Berry's obviously been the shining light of the forward line for a couple of seasons now. But no, the amount of experience, as you just said, that we've lost is incredible to lose in one fell swoop, and trying to replace that is pretty much impossible. It's going to be one uphill task for Leanne and the scouting team to try and bring in bodies before Tuesday. It's going to be an extremely difficult job to get the numbers up, because I dare say clubs have got players signed up now. They've got people on contracts, so it's going to be very difficult. Clubs all they'll want money for their players. So are we going to be in a position that we actually spend some cash and bring some players in? So it's the experience part now, that because as you just said, the midfield that we've spoken about, that's going to that midfield sometimes got us over the line in big games. Chelsea Cornet come up the winner against Celtic in the away at Hamilton ground. They just had a way of somehow getting over the line, and that experience got them, dragged them through it. So yeah, I think the lack of experience now in the team is the most alarming bit now for me.
Yeah, Car, I mean, looking at this graphic, I mean, the defence is very, very light. I mean, they've got basically two fullbacks listed as centre backs in there, and and Joe and Ailey, and Joe, sorry, and where am I going with this?
Nick,
sorry, Nick. Yeah, sorry. With Nick and Ailey, they're neither of them are centre backs. We've got Kathy just coming back from injury. Who knows when we'll see Rafa again? And as Brian says, we've got 4 days left of the window because it closes on Tuesday. There will be a chance of picking up players from England, but it'll be players that the clubs there don't really want because their window's closed. They won't be able to replace them if we bring them in. So really, we're right behind the 8 ball here.
Well, I mean, you can say that again. It's just madness, isn't it? We've got 4 days to kind of replace relationships and grit and determination that we've essentially lost. All of those players now need to get used to each other, how they play. We're a couple of injuries away from not being able to field a squad, essentially, or you're going to have defenders playing up front because we've got no other options. It's crazy that it's been allowed to happen. We're allowed to say no. We don't have to sell players if we need them. If they're still under contract, Donald could have said, listen, I appreciate that, but you can have her next year, sign her on a pre-contract or something, because we absolutely needed to keep Liv or Kirsty, mainly Liv, in my opinion. But it's stupid what's been allowed to happen, but there's nothing we could do about it now other than try and bring players in. But I don't like that we've brought a lot of young loan players in. I mean, it's 2, but that's still more than it should be. That we're then developing for other teams that are then going to go and play down south again. We're not developing our own that we could have done instead of sending them out on loan before bringing those other youngsters in. That's what annoyed me the most about it. We could have just been developing our own young players, but they're already on loan, so I don't think we can bring them back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's as Dodd the Greek says, Demi, any young ones to come up, and Carl's just absolutely nailed it. Yes, there is, but they're all out on loan, and they were out on loan very, very early in the window. And I wish we could, but I don't think we'd be able to recall them, because on the face of it, our first 11 is going to be quite good and quite competitive. But these days, football's not an 11-man woman game. It's a squad game. It's a 16, 17, 18 player game, because you need to use your subs very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, obviously all of our young players are out on loan now. I mean, you'd assume that there would be an option to recall them, if the situation occurs, if someone got injured, or you've got to assume, Rangers have been pretty smart about that, and because you can put that in, you can put like emergency recalls in your loans. So you've got to assume that we've been, smart enough to do that if we knew some of those players were going to be leaving. But yeah, in terms of the, our young players, I think the only one that we've actually currently got on the books is Maycroft, who, she looks really good. She's quite physical, and in the middle of the park, she's strong on the ball. So yeah, we've got to hope we can see some more minutes of her and not just send her out on loan in January or next year.
So, Carl, to answer Christopher Lloyd's question, and apparently he's asking for a friend, is May ready to make the step up?
We're going to find out because we don't really have any other option. I think she probably is, but I don't think an Old Firm's probably the best game for her to play 90 minutes beside new players that she's not really played beside. I don't think that's the best idea, but we don't have any other option. So I think she is. I think she's smart for her age. She's got good footballing knowledge and good ability. It's whether she can consistently play 90 minutes for a period of time. I don't know, because I don't know how her fitness is. Obviously, she's young, so hopefully that wouldn't be a problem. But ideally, we need someone else in there a bit more experienced so that she doesn't have to do that, because how many times have we done that with players, thrown them in, and then they've just absolutely crashed and burned because it's too much for them to start with. They need time to bed in and get used to it, especially at that age.
Yep. And Brian, I'll bring this comment from JD to you. He said, what is the vision sold to the players? And Joe disillusioned them to make people not want to hang around. That's possibly a bit odd when Kirsty's away to play for Joe. But I get what he's trying to say there. It could also be a mix of players being told to move on and offers being hard to refuse. It is a bit of a mess.
I think a mess is putting it absolutely mildly. I think this is just, I think every Rangers women's fan's worst nightmare. To be quite honest, I think nobody envisaged. I think there was one or two that you envisaged leaving just purely for being at the club a while and maybe wanted to move on, experience something new. But it's the amount of people that have left, and at one, you can cope with losing one of those us every summer, or maybe two at a push. But the fact that we've lost all that goals, all that grit and desire, all that assists, it's as I said before, it's almost nigh on impossible to try and replace that now. It's going to be a minor miracle now for us to get us out of this hole. And obviously the buck lies with the people that sort of keep the Rangers women's contracts, or organise that. I mean, gee whiz, they've surely now got to sort of at least try and answer the sort of questions and say, like, why how's this been allowed to happen? At least the ones that I've mentioned, the midfield ones, for example, you kind of knew Kirsty was going to leave, Kirsty McLean was going to leave. You kind of knew Chelsea Cornett was going to leave. So, where was the sort of forward planning to think, right, okay, they're going to leave, we're going to try and get other folk in? It doesn't seem to be much on the face of it. We're all speaking from looking, outside in here, but it doesn't look as though there's been much forward planning, in the sense that there's no, reaction to these players leaving, and that's the worrying bit for me.
Yeah, Demi, that worries me as well. The fact that okay, we sort of all expected Jo to leave at the end of the season, and she didn't. She left after the summer had started, just as we were coming back for training. So that probably took the club a bit by surprise. But I don't suppose it had been that much of a surprise. I mean, Donald Gillis keeps telling us that they've got plans in place. They should have a succession plan, not just for the manager but also for players. I mean, it just appears that there hasn't been any. I mean, they've let all these players go, and we haven't brought in light for light. The squad's really, really light. When we've got 20 players to try and see out the season. We haven't been able to fill the bench this season, bar I think one game. As I said earlier, the starting 11 is probably quite good, but the bench is going to be very, very light. So it is a bit of a dereliction from those in the background and it goes to Kevin Thelwell as well, because he's in charge of the whole shooting match. He's the football director for the whole club, and he made a point of it. I mean, it struck me as a bit, when the men's window closed at the weekend, it struck me as a bit, well, that was our priority, and I get that, right? But surely this week he should have been working doubly hard to make sure that there was players coming in, because we really, really need bodies in the door.
Yeah, and I mean, you say we've got a strong starting 11, but this is Rangers, and we are unfortunately on both teams. We're a club constantly cursed with injuries, so at the minute we've got a strong starting 11. That that could change on Sunday. I mean, touch wood not, but two of them could be out injured long term. And they've got to look at that. It's been an issue for a while now. That we have players out and they'll be out for a game, come back, then they'll be out again, or they're just they're out long term. So I think they do really need to look into that, because right now we've got a strong starting 11, but like I said, that could all come crumbling down on Sunday. But But yeah, you know, I mean, some of the key players, you knew you were away. You knew they were away. I mean, we all said after the cup final at Hampden, you know, that Chelsea was away. You know, you could just kind of tell by, you know, the sort of the way she was acting. And you know, that was us watching on from the stands. So you're telling me that for all these players who maybe not so much live in Kirsty, you know, who have just left, but the sort of rest of them, you know, who left earlier on in the window, you're telling me that someone inside the club didn't know they were away? Because if we're noticing it from the stands, it's a bizarre one. But yeah, you know, with the players who have left, we've lost 48 league goals from last season. You know, 4 of our top 8 goal scorers from last season are now away. And that, you know, the people that we've brought in to replace them don't, obviously, hopefully they'll be different up here, but they don't have the same numbers as those that we've lost. So obviously it's a concerning thing when you think about it.
Yeah, Car, I mean, whether they expect the players to leave or not, you know, surely the way you run a football club is have people in, you know, have a list of people ready to come in, for whether that's for the manager, whether that's for the assistant coach, whether it's for your goalkeeper, your striker, whatever. You know, surely they must. And it's not like, okay, the manager's new, Leanne's just in the door, right? But the coaches are all still the same. You know, Donald's still been here. You know what I mean? Surely they had a list of players ready to act on it if people left. And I get a couple of them have left kind of towards the end of the window. But we've been short of bodies the whole summer.
Well, I mean, I don't know how it works with the women's department, but I assume they have some sort of scouting network, or is it just Donald? Is it just Donald that's tasked with finding players and sorting that kind of thing out? I don't really know how it works, but you'd think that they would have something like a list or players they've had contact with to say, listen, we're interested. If at any point we need you, would you be interested in coming up and seeing? But it doesn't really seem like there's been much movement other than, well, we've got 2 youngsters in, which is good, and hopefully for the future, and then a couple of loans, which seem to kind of come out of nowhere. But an 18-year-old that's not really played any professional football isn't great when we're needing experienced players in. So they need to do something with scouting or the academy and maybe hold off on loans until we know what's going on. But it just seems a bit of a disarray, and now they're kind of scrambling to figure out what they're going to do, and if they're even going to do anything. We might just be left the way that it is until January.
Yeah, and Brian, there's Paul. Another comment from Paul, who's always on the ball with these shows. He did say to you guys that we needed more players to add more quality. You guys said we had enough. We did have enough, but 2 of them have just left. You know what I mean? 2 of the more experienced players have left, and even if we'd kept some of our academy players, we'd still have lost the experience. And okay, I know Liv's only 20, but she's been here for 2 years. You know, she's been absolutely integral in the middle of that midfield. So she's got the experience. Kirsty Howitt's been around the Scottish game an awful long time. You know, she's had five years at this spell with Rangers, won it all. So, you know, when Paul, you're right, at that time you did say we needed more players, and fair play to you for the foresight, but now we desperately need more players, and we're running out of time. We've got a huge game on Sunday against a Celtic team who, quite frankly, I don't think are the team they were. From what I mean, I don't pay that much attention to them, but I mean, I don't think they're as good as they have been in the past. But it's still very, very worrying.
It's, yeah. I mean, we're now in a position where, you know, you've got the likes of Hearts that have strengthened quite well. You know, they've signed some, you know, a lot of players. So I mean, they were on our coattails last season. You know, they were pushing the Glasgow Cities, the Celtics, and us even last season. So I mean, I believe they've signed well this year. So I mean, do you see us even competing on that level? I mean, this is the sort of alarm bells that should be starting going off, and you know, the fans' heads now is the you know, are we in a position now to compete for the league? And you've got to turn around and say we're probably not now. And that's just brutally honest. We're not. I don't think we've got the experience. I don't think we've got the knowledge and the grit and determination to get through a league campaign. I mean, you could argue that the last 2 seasons we've had, you know, a really settled team, and you know, we've had goal scorers, and we've still not won the league. We've lost it in goal difference. So what chance have we got now with all that assists and goals out of the team? So I would say this is going to be a really long season for the fans. I'm afraid to say, because on the face of it, it doesn't look as though there's any incomings coming very soon. And even if we do sign incomings, there've got to be some players to replace the players we've lost. So I'm envisaging a very barren season this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, Cara, it is quite worrying. I mean, even looking back to last weekend, okay, I know we beat Motherwell 2-1, but the previous weekend they'd been hammered by Montrose. You know what I mean? And then that was the fact that we struggled to put them away. That worries me. We're not really scoring goals. We've conceded a goal in every game of this season. I mean, even Montrose scored against us. Okay, it was a cracker, but they took the lead against us. We were lucky to get a point off Hearts at Ibrox. I think Brian's maybe got a point. I think this is going to be a very, very long season. I mean, last season we couldn't beat any of the other top five, and we are weaker than we were then.
Well, yeah, and also if you look at last weekend, if we now don't have Kirsty Howitt, then that's a draw. That's another draw. So that'd be 2 draws that we start the season with. The performances have already been rubbish, and that's with a stronger team, and now we've lost 2 of them on top of that. I mean, it's kind of dire already, the way that we were, and I just put that down to teething issues at the start of the season, Leanne coming in and trying to figure out the system, and now she's lost even more players, less players to play about with to try and figure out the system. I genuinely don't think we win anything this year, and I hate saying that because I hate thinking that's the way that it's going to be, but I don't think we win anything this year. And maybe that's good because maybe next year we strengthen, we manage to get players in and we figure it out, but it's going to be horrendous. I mean, we laughed at Celtic last year for how bad they were, and I think that's going to be us this season. That's how bad I think it's going to be.
I mean, Demi, there's your loyal Muppet. Never has been a better chance to win the league with the other lot being in disarray. They're in disarray, so are we. But let's not forget, Hibs won the league. I mean, it's not like we're trying to take the league off of that other lot. It's Hibs that won the league. Hearts have started well. As Brian says, they've signed some decent players. They're doing okay. Hibs will still do okay. Trying to fight on 2 fronts might curtail them in the early part of the season, but as Carl says, this is going to be a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, even in that, not to mention, Glasgow City, they've signed some big names, experienced names this summer, ones who have been in, not only in the Scottish game, some who have just been in the game for a while. So, I wouldn't write them off this season either. I think Hibs winning it last year would have been I don't want to say a motivator for Hearts, but I also do want to say a motivator for Hearts. They've just watched their rivals who, went professional at the same time as them, go on and win the league. So that's now a thing of why can't Hearts do it? If Hibs can do it, why can't they? So I think, this season's going to be even closer than it was last season. And I expect it to go down to, again, the last couple of games. But with many more teams involved, I wouldn't expect it to just be sort of, a three-way race going into the sort of split. I would expect it to be on near enough everyone in the top 6 pushing for the league.
Brian, from what we've seen so far this season, if Demi's prediction comes through, it's not just a 2 or 3 horse race. Are we going to be in that race? Are we going to be one of the horses in that race? Yellow card for Brian.
I just realised that, yes. No, I genuinely don't see us being in that race. How can you say we're in that race when we've lost all the players we've lost and we haven't either replaced them with similar or better? You just can't.
I think you've also got to look at the other teams as well, though. We're saying we've lost all of these players, but I mean, you got to look across the city. They've lost a lot of their big players. Hibs have lost 2 or 3 of their big players. So yeah, it's hard for us because we're devastated with who we've lost and we've not replaced them properly. But we're not the only club in this situation, so I would still expect us to be, in the race towards the end. But I think it will be harder without those big players. But it's not just us in the situation.
I'm effectively resigning myself to not being in a league title race, just so my hopes don't get up too much, because I genuinely just don't see us competing with the squad that's current as the squad currently sits. I don't see us being near the league, unfortunately.
Right, Carl, to move away just from us for a minute and to pick up on Demi's point that other teams have lost players as well. JD makes a very valid point. I hadn't even given this a second thought. Is with the American League being the women's game being more popular in America, basically, you'd have thought the ladies would be getting a lot more focus because we've now got American owners. Hibs have got American owners. There's an American in it with a big influence in it. Hearts, you would think that with all this American influence in Scottish football now, there'd be more focus on the women's game. But the teams appear to all be getting weaker.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some success with bringing American players over. Obviously, the timing of the leagues works out quite well for us. I think come January, they're not playing anymore. So that way, potentially, I guess it's probably been our owners that wanted us to play at Ibrox. So in a sense, they are trying to do more and get more eyes on the team. But I don't know how much more they can really do in such a short space of time other than, I guess, throw a lot of money at it. But I don't know if they really want to do that with the shambles that the men's team is at the moment, and they need to try and sort that out first. But you would think the league would do more. I mean, I guess they kind of are doing more than they have in previous seasons to try and promote the SWPL and the SWPL too, but it's still nowhere near compared to England and abroad, the amount that they do for their women's leagues. We're so far behind.
Yeah, I mean, Demi, I don't want to go into the old kickoff time hobby horse that I've got again, but you would think that they would do more. I mean, the Rangers men's first team have just had games moved because obviously we're now in the Europa League and playing on Sundays. And the one that sticks out for me like an absolute sore thumb is in 3 weeks' time, Rangers men's first team are away at Livingston. It's live on Sky. It's at 3:00 in the afternoon, which is a great kick-off time for football. We play Glasgow City at Ibrox at 4:00. If that was a traditional 12:00 lunchtime live on Sky, you could do both games. They're trying to promote the game. They're going to Ibrox to get more eyes on it. Nobody's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think, when they, as much as we all complain that, they don't plan ahead and they change kickoffs the week before, the women's supporters also have to, plan for the season as well. And I don't think they could have just, sort of held off on fixture dates to see which European competition our men's team were going to be in. Had Bruges have gone in our favour, that would have been perfect because we'd have played on Saturdays and that game would have been the Sunday. So I do think it's one, given that the fixtures had to be released before we knew our situation with Europe, it's a hard one. You can't just go back and change, every fixture or change the kickoff time. But yeah, I do know what you're saying. It's a bit of a nightmare when because that everyone's going to be at home watching the men, and it's a game that they've moved to Ibrox, and people probably won't get to Ibrox in time, depending where they live, from watching the men's game.
Well, they won't get there because both games were getting played at the same time, so they wouldn't even get a TV audience for it. But yeah. Brian, do you think, and we're thinking out the box, it's not really a road I wanted to go down tonight, but, would there be any scope if they really cared about trying to get eyes on the women's game? Now that the men's game's been confirmed for 3:00 on the Sunday, could they move the women's game to the Saturday sometime? Given that it's Ibrox, so it's up to us when we play it, and they're two professional teams, so there's not half our players are working on Saturday.
There's no reason why they couldn't. Don't see it happening. I feel slightly sorry for the women's side here, purely for the fact that it's the men's that are encroaching into the Sunday, like 4:00, slot that the women's time usually is. So 100%. It's unusual.
Sorry, but I feel, I don't know why Sky have suddenly taken this 3:00 slot for men's games, because it probably won't just affect our women's team, it'll probably affect other teams as well. I haven't even looked at other fixtures, but there's going to be, other games affected by that. And
yeah, I do feel sorry slightly for the women's side, the women's game here, because they've obviously identified 4:00 on a Sunday as the time that seems to be they feels best. And now obviously the Sky have decided to plump the men at 3:00 an hour before. So it seems a bit daft. I mean, I dare say the clubs have not really got much say in this, because Sky are the sort of overlords of when kickoff times are and timings and stuff. So unfortunately, this is just the women's team are just collateral damage in this, unfortunately, which is not what we wanted. But here we are again.
Yep, Carl, there's things like this. Sorry, Demi, you go.
Sorry, just off the back of what Brian's just said, it's like he says about the decision being up to Sky and, sort of not up to the clubs. We, the last 2 seasons, we've already learned that Sky don't particularly care about the women's game in Scotland. They sponsor a league to then not show anything until they, we'll give BBC Alba the rights to the semi-final, we'll only take the final. So Sky, they probably know people will watch it. If that's the time they want. I don't really think they've considered, supporters and how they'd get to the women's game as well as the men's game, because frankly, their priorities in the men's game, and unfortunately, we learned that the past 2 seasons.
Having said that, the game on Sunday is at 3:05 against Celtic from Hamilton, and it's live on Sky. But anyway, that's. But you're
international
right.
Break. It's international. Yeah. They need to. If they have a choice of moving our game early and playing a women's game later in the afternoon, they're not going to do it. They have to show something this weekend. There's no professional men's game, so they've got to fill that slot with something.
Oh, 100%. No, you're right. You're 100% right. And I forgot what I was going to ask you, Car. I was going to ask you something very, very profound, but we'll just I'll stay with you, Car. We'll go on to Sunday, obviously, as I say, 3:05, because don't forget you've got the your phone going mental at 3:00 with the government alarm thing that's going off at 3:00 on your phones. So the game kicks off at 3:05. It's at Hamilton. It's their home. It's Celtic's home game at Hamilton, which I always find a wee bit odd, but anyway. And 3:05 kickoff live on Sky. Tickets are available. That's annoying me as well. Not that they're available, but the fact they've gone up by 20% from last year when they'd gone up 25% from the year before. Because 2 years ago they were £8. Last year they were a tenner, and now they're £12. Still, for an Old Firm game, it's still not an awful lot of money, but it's gone up at a hell of a lick. How are we going to get on?
I don't know. I don't know if we come out guns blazing. Jodie McCleary decides that she's had enough and just absolutely bangs them in for fun because she's annoyed by the situation and wants to put herself in the shop window. I don't know. Or it's going to be an absolute disaster and we're going to get beaten probably about 4-0. I genuinely don't know. And I don't think you can call it from their end either, because as you say, they've also been decimated. They've lost a lot of players. So it could genuinely be a boring 0-0 like the men's was, or it could be 4-4. You can't call it because both sides are a bit of disarray at the moment. But yeah, I don't understand why they put the prices up. I think it's because they can't charge for the car park anymore, because they were told by Hamilton that they're not allowed to do that because they don't own the stadium. So I think they put the prices up to try and make a bit of money from there because they can't charge for the car park anymore.
Okay, and JD was reading my mind. I was going to ask you, is the moon really made of cheese?
According to Wallace and Gromit, it is, and I believe them for everything that exists. So I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with yes. There you go. And Paul's asking, do we have a fans liaison officer to listen to the fans and report back to the club? We do, but she's not really a liaison officer. She's like a fan. She's like a fan support on match days. She's also a very good friend of mine. And they do put out the club do put out a survey after every game for anybody that's bought a ticket. So
they don't anymore. They haven't this season.
Have they not? I ignore them. I ignore them anyway, but I don't. Well, maybe I don't know. But yeah, yes, there is, Paul, and believe me, she's well aware that Rangers as a club have to win every game, because I've known her a lot longer than she's been than she's been in her liaison officer gig. If we want to give her that gig, and she's
not as bad as you at away games.
Aye, yeah.
Well, she played for Rangers, so if that's not enough, I'm sure Mara played for Rangers.
Played for Partick Thistle. I don't think she played for Rangers.
She never played for Rangers. She played for Partick.
I was under the impression that she had.
Yeah, but yeah, so she's well aware of it. Don't worry. And I believe that the current Rangers women's manager stays in the same, or certainly used to stay in the same block as her as well. I don't know if she still does, but and if that's in a footballing sense, no, she's not, because she's got bad knees. That's why she had to stop playing. So we'll just put it down as Dodd, that being in the footballing sense. So there was a couple of comments I wanted to pull up here, Demi. Snipe was asking the kickoff time. Obviously, we know it's 3:05. Here's one from Boop. So, Demi, I'm going to throw this at you because that's what I really need to do as a living father. How long does Leanne get? If it doesn't start getting better, how long does she get?
Oh God, this is the question. Everyone asks the same with Joe. She gets until she's proven, until she shows that she's not capable of taking on the task of being Rangers manager. I mean, you can't say based on right now, by the way, you've had a couple draws. That's not good enough, you know. It's because it's been a whole shambles. Players coming, going, injured here, there. We're playing right backs at centre backs and centre backs in the middle, and so you know, I think when the window closes on Tuesday, you know, and the team's set with what we've got, she has to prove that, you know, she can go on and win games, and no matter sort of how hard it gets, that she can, you know, she can get the team up for these games. So I think she's got until, you know, she proves that she doesn't have it in her to win things.
Different slant on that, Brian, from Beatbot, but obviously we can't really see at this stage, which is what Demi was trying to say, because she's only just in the door. But going off instinct, is Leanne Crichton the one to take Rangers back to the top? To ask that in a slightly different way, do you think Leanne was brought in because they knew this was going to be a bit of a car crash of a season, that players were going to be leaving hand over fist, and we weren't probably going to replace them? And, you know, do you think she was brought in with that in mind, rather than try to bring in a name? Silence is good in the podcast. Silence is good in the podcast.
I genuinely don't know. I'm trying to work out. I mean, have they reacted to the fact that Leanne does a lot of media work and she talks well on that? She was obviously Glasgow City assistant. You know, she's been involved in, you know, coaching for a wee while now. I don't know. I really don't know. And I mean, let's be honest, you could have anybody in situ just now and it'd be an extremely difficult job, wouldn't it? I mean, with the cards that's been dealt, you know, with the players that have left, I mean, it would be very difficult for any manager with any experience, you know, even if they were vastly experienced, to sort of cope with this sort of, you know, shambles. So I find it's a bit, yeah, I'm not quite sure where to go with that one. Yeah, she's a young manager, but at the same time, you think, well, it's going to be extremely difficult for any manager to cope with this. So yeah, I don't quite know where. I don't know. I'm just going to sit on the fence with that one, I'm afraid. Not like me, but I will.
No, it's not like you at all, Brian. There's Dodie Greek. They have a 2-tier priority. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think I'm interpreting that as meaning that the women are classed as second class behind the men. I'm assuming that's what I mean.
Yeah, and I think you can tell that they are, because the men's always going to be the priority. That's the one that makes the money. That's the one that gets the people in the door. So I do get that from to an extent, but you can't just let the women's team flounder. You have to do something to try and fix the situation. And I think bringing Leanne in, they've tried their best. She knows the Scottish game, which I think has probably been the appeal. But again, is an unproven assistant manager. She won stuff as a player, but that doesn't necessarily translate into being a good manager. If you can't get the players up and get them excited and build that rapport with them, then it's not going to work. But we'll see.
And JD, another comment coming in from JD. Demi, for you. Joe had a horse 40 years, cut a leg off, and handed Leanne a 3-legged horse to win the next race. Great analogy. That's actually not a bad analogy, JD, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like Carr says, Leanne won a lot as, you know, as a player, but she's not really that experienced as a manager. And obviously last year she was assistant manager at Glasgow City, and you know, that was arguably their weakest squad that they've had in recent years, you know, and they were still able to finish second. Obviously, you know, you want to win it, but with Hibs strengthening as much as they did, and you know, Glasgow City being as poor as they were last season, you know, you've got to look at that as an achievement in itself. Obviously, they didn't win anything with that, but you know, they had arguably quite a weak squad. You know, I'd say they had a weaker squad than us, and okay, only just, but it finished above us, you know. So you got to look at that, and you know, like Carr says, if we've got players coming in and out and got a weakened squad, if there's anyone who hopefully can make that work in Scotland, it's Leanne.
Yep, there's Paul in again. I mean, I know this has been really, really negative, but Paul absolutely nails it. No matter what, we always follow. We're all Rangers through and through. That's why we're all here, giving up a Friday night for you know, just to chat about all things Rangers. And with that, Brian, Sunday, can't get away from it. First Old Firm game of the season. Two, probably from what we've seen so far, two fairly average teams. But there's no such thing as an average Old Firm game. So How many are we going to win by?
Last week, or
I think, like Carr said, if this ends up 5-0 either way or 4-4, you're not going to be surprised. And if it ends up 0-0, you're not going to be surprised either. So, I mean, it's almost you just don't know which way this is going to go. You don't know. Our team's not played a lot together. You know, they've signed a lot of new players, and I'm put it this way. I might be the doom, the sort of doom, the bringer of doom in the pod this season, because I'm not very confident at all. I'm very sceptical how we'll do this season. So I am really not looking forward to Sunday at all.
Okay, and Carl, I'm going to throw this one to you because there's no point in giving this to Demi because she won't have a clue who Angela Rayner is. But Beatbot Boot right at the top of the show said that Elena Sudoku is a bigger fraud than Angela Rayner.
That's incredible. I don't talk about politics, but that is an incredible comment to make. That is unbelievable.
Is he right?
Well, the fact that she's still in a job is more than you can say for Angela Rayner. So
Well, that's true.
madness that she is. She should have been sacked. So I don't understand how she's still in a job. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think we all expected it to go in the summer, but it was Joe that left and not her. So how are we going to get on Sunday, Carl?
I'm going to stick with my original 2-1 just because I don't like changing it this close to the game. And I'm going to stick with my original Laura Berry, which is now going to be more than likely every week than it was 2 days ago, which I'm quite happy about, but obviously sad about players leaving.
And Demi?
yeah,
bear,
you know what?
Bear in mind you'll be sitting in a car with me on the way to the game, so make it a positive one.
Yeah, I'm getting there. You know, on the pod on Monday, I said it was going to be 3-2 to us in light of the recent signings and leavings, and I've dropped that ever so slightly, but you know, I still think we're going to win. We'll win 2-1, and Brogues will score the first goal.
Nice to see you still sticking with that one. At least your first goal scorer still here for now.
On Monday night on the pod, I did say Kirsty would score first, but you know, had to change that ever so slightly. But yeah, I think it'll be 2-1. Brogan Hay to score first, right on halftime.
And there's Paul quite rightly saying there's only 14 likes. I don't even usually bother with likes, but let's get the likes up, folks. If you don't mind, it all helps. Like and share and subscribe, and make sure you've got the old bell on so you know when we're going live, because we sometimes do throw things out like we did tonight. I'm going to say 2-0 on Sunday, but the second goal is going to come very late. We're going to tie it up very late. We're all going to get a little bit anxious coming up towards the end of the game. But that'll do us for tonight. I don't know if any Brian, you probably got the title of the pod. I don't think the other two would have had a clue.
I was going to say you spelled it. I thought you'd spelled it wrong. I'm not going to lie.
I checked it twice. Is it the Crichton Factor? Brian, you must remember the Crichton Factor, surely.
Yes, of course I do. Yes.
So
I used to watch it religiously. I loved the Crichton Factor. It was brilliant.
So
it was ace. But I'm going to continue with my doom and gloom, and I'm going to say a 2-1 loss.
Okay, there you go, folks. So, and there's the Sniper doing my next bit. I'm just going to gloss right over the top of that. Sniper doing my next bit for me. Scotland watch along coming up. Troops. Alex is doing the watch along, either with or without Connor. I'm not sure if Connor's joining him. He's coming on in about 15 minutes to do that. So get yourself a cup of coffee and or a can of beer or whatever if you're so inclined. Carol, will you be watching the Scotland game tonight?
I don't know what channel it's on. If it's on a channel I can access.
It's on Council Telly.
Oh yeah, then probably I'll stick it on. Yeah.
Demi, I know you're watching it.
Yeah, I similar to what Carl said. You know, it's on BBC, so yeah, I'll shove it on.
Brian, will you be watching the Scotland game?
Probably not. International football's not my thing, so if it's on in the background, it'll maybe be on, but I'm not making a point of watching it. There's not many Rangers players in it, so can't be bothered with it.
I don't do international football, and St Helens are playing Wigan tonight, which is the big derby, so I'll be watching that. Anyway, we'll be back with you on Monday, hopefully to dissect a very good Rangers victory on on Sunday, despite Brian's gloom and doom. We can all come on Monday and laugh at him and say, ha ha ha, you got it wrong.
I'll take that. I'll
got it wrong. So hopefully we're all laughing at Brian.
Yes. I will take that abuse quite happily on Monday if that happens.
Okay, so we'll see you on Monday. Come hell or high water, win, lose or draw, we'll be back on Monday at 6:30. So thank you very much, everybody who jumped into the comments. Absolutely brilliant interaction again. Brian, thanks very much for coming on. Car for jumping in, and Demi as well. Thank you very much indeed. I'll see 2 of you on Sunday, and I'll see you whenever, Brian.